Everybody ready? All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dean Logan, the Registrar Recorder County Clerk for Los Angeles County. Thank you for being here today. Happy Election Day. It is the state direct primary in California, and I wanted to take the opportunity just to give you a little bit of overview of how things are proceeding today and kind of what's happened up until today, and then put that in perspective of some previous elections. Then I'm going to invite our Chair of our Board of Supervisors and First District Supervisor Hilda Solis to offer some comments on behalf of county leadership, and then I'll come back up and talk a little bit about what to expect tonight and in the days to follow election. So I think the good news to share with you is that voting is happening. Everything opened timely this morning. We have not had any significant incidents. Voting has been steady throughout the day. As it's after 2 o'clock, we're seeing some buildup in certain areas. That's not unexpected. That's what we see in every election. And as we get later into the evening tonight, we'll see that kind of last-minute rush of people who waited to the final hours to vote. But we have capacity for that, and we are ready and able to serve those voters when they show up. Just before coming in here, I can tell you that we just surpassed 100,000 voters who have showed up to vote in person today. And we are approaching 1 million vote-by-mail ballots that have been returned through various methods. So voting activity in these last few days has picked up significantly. That compares to, if you look back to the last gubernatorial primary, which was in June of 2022, we are trending about 2 to 3 percentage points ahead of where we were at that same election 4 years ago. So June primaries are notoriously lower turnout compared to other statewide elections and certainly compared to our general elections, but this one is trending above that norm, and I think based on what we're seeing out at the vote centers today and what we expect to see from a lot of vote-by-mail ballots coming back today through the various methods of return, that we probably will land somewhere in the mid-30 percentile range of turnout for this election, and that compares to about 28% 4 years ago. So I think that's the good news. So there's really nothing more to report than to tell you that voting is going well out there. So the message that we want to send to voters is there's still time to vote. If you're holding on to that vote-by-mail ballot on your counter, now's the time to fill it out. Take it and drop it at one of our 424 ballot drop boxes that are located throughout the county. As long as it's in that box by 8 o'clock tonight, that is a valid vote. And you can also drop those off at any one of our 646 vote centers that are open tonight until 8 o'clock if you prefer to do that other than going into the vote center and voting in person yourself. Vote centers are what I always like to remind voters, especially at this stage of the day, is our vote centers, our in-person vote centers, are equipped to assist all voters. So if voters have language needs and they want to access the ballot in a language other than English, we have 19 languages that are on our ballot marking devices. That means that you can use the audio feature to hear the ballot in your preferred language. You can see it on the screen in your preferred language, and it will print out in your preferred language so you can verify that the vote was as you intended it to be. We also have a number of accessibility features that are available at the vote centers. So voters have the ability to change the font size and the contrast on the ballot marking device. And there are other assistive devices available so that everybody can have an independent, accessible voting experience. And with that, everything is going smoothly. I do want to take an opportunity to publicly acknowledge and thank all of the election workers that are out there in the field today. Again, 646 voting locations. That didn't just start today. We've had vote centers open for the 10 days prior to today. So the great thing about this model is we woke up today and we knew that those vote centers were functioning well, and that we had good, solid staff out there to do that work. That's a combination of county employees from all county departments, community volunteers, and high school students that participate as election workers to support every election in LA County. So it really is a representative sample of how elections belong to the community and belong to the electorate. Here in Los Angeles County, In anticipation of this election cycle, given concerns that have been raised nationally and around the state about security or disruption, we were very proactive in bringing together the leaders throughout county government. So we really have an all-hands approach here in the county. So I want to, in particular, thank the Sheriff's Office, who has been a great partner. Later tonight, the Sheriff's Office will facilitate getting the ballots back from those vote centers to this ballot processing center by helicopter and by patrol car. We depend on them for that secure transfer. Our Office of Emergency Management has been very active in making sure if there were any fire events happening in the county, that we were monitoring those. If they were anywhere in an area where there would be a drop box or a vote center or a shelter-in-place activity, we were able to respond to that quickly. Our countywide communications team from the CEO's office has been assisting us with responding to your inquiries in the media, but also making sure that we get information out to the public to remind them of their options for voting and how to find out where voting locations are and drop boxes are located. So we've really approached this from 3 pillars of security, readiness, and resilience, and that has played out successfully so far today, and we're confident that that's going to continue through to the close of polls tonight. So with that, let me turn this over to our chair of our Board of Supervisors, 1st District Supervisor Hilda Solis, to share some remarks about that coordinated leadership here in the county. Supervisor.
Thank you, and you can tell I'm a little, maybe a little frog in my throat. We've been out visiting, especially today, our voting centers, and I was just so delighted. I was sharing with Dean how terribly important it is for people to volunteer, and our county staff, as well as people from the community, and as well as high school students that I met during the course of the last 2 days that I went out and saw the enthusiasm, and really, again, want to underscore how important it is to be able to make clear that there's so many thousands of election workers who volunteer, many of them their time. Some are assigned from the county, but many do it out of their heart. And I met so many individuals from all walks of life, young and old, and from speaking different languages, as Dean said. And really, I think they're the ones who are uplifting what is happening here, because it isn't all about having, we talk about security. Yes, we know that. But there's also this notion that voting is about people, and it's about making sure that the people control what outcomes occur. And they are, as I would say, exercising, that constitutional right to cast their vote and to show up. And I'm not disappointed. I was earlier today about noon over in Hacienda Heights at the voting center there at one of our parks, and was very impressed to see that already after the polls opened at 7, by noon, before noon, there were already 430 some people that voted, that walked in, and others that were just dropping off their ballots. And I asked one of the workers there, what do you think it's going to look like later on? And they said, well, typically for this time, we're probably going to see double until we close at 8 o'clock. And I was very heartened to hear that, because with all the noise and rhetoric that we're hearing around elections across the country, I think here in LA County, we are a much different story, and I want to say that. And many of you may not even know that the county's balloting process during last year, 2025, we received the Golden Eagle Award because of this premier facility that is here. The county has invested millions and millions of dollars to make this one of the state-of-the-art institutions, not just for LA County, but clearly beyond California and for the country. And we've had visitors come from all over internationally in the course of the time that this facility has been built, that I have personally seen come here wanting to know the processes, how you're able to make sure that everything is free, fair, and accessible to everyone, and number one, transparent. That's what's really important about this whole process here. And I want to thank all the county residents that continue to exercise their right to vote. That is a fundamental right to vote. and nobody should be discarded or shooed away or somehow intimidated by that. And I'm happy that we have been able to work closely with everyone on many, many important races here in California. Just last year, we saw Prop 50. We know that there's a very important election today, and many of our voters held on to their ballots because they were trying to make a decision as to who they were going to vote for governor. Some are still deciding. We have a very important election in the city of Los Angeles, but we also have other federal and local and state elections that are happening and ballot initiatives that equally are taking time for our voters to really go through. This was one of the longest ballots, I think, Dean, that I've seen. It took me a while to fill out my absentee ballot at home, but I took my time and I did the best that I could. And I know that people are very serious about this, especially in some of our immigrant communities where they take pride in being able to go out and the day of election exercise that right. Because in many of the countries or where their families come from, they can't do that. So that's what separates us from many other places around the world. And I just had to underscore that. I just want to say that we're diligent here in the LA County, and I'm so happy that we have the Sheriff's Department here working with us, all the volunteers that are out there today, not just in this facility, but around the county. And I also want to underscore how important the safety and protection that we get from our sheriff's leadership and other combined cities that help us out. The registrar recorder, our county clerk, has spent months, as Dean said, preparing for this election. We hear about this almost a year before, and slowly each year helping to augment their budget to help them to make sure that this is seamless as possible. And I think we're getting it right better and better. And I want to say that that includes not just the 100 vote centers throughout the county, but also secure ballot drop boxes and, most important, language assistance. I can't tell you how important that has been, a big priority for me in the last 12 years that I have been serving on this board, having access in different languages and also for people that experience disabilities. And today I saw it on full display. I saw people representing different languages that were there, ready, available, assisted with everything just right there printed on their shirt. I speak Spanish, I speak Vietnamese, I speak Russian, I speak Armenian. That's very important for people to understand that they're accepted, that we're here to help them. I do want to mention that in the past 2 days I visited Bell, Commerce, Montebello, today El Monte, Bassett, and Hacienda Heights, and saw many of our volunteers and very, very modern facilities, whether it was in a school gym or whether it was in a community center or one of our own libraries. These things are all important, that we have those partnerships with everyone, because this isn't a single exercise that we carry out. We do it with the work of everyone else. And that brings me to recognizing some of the volunteers that are assigned by some of our departments, who also need to be noted that, you know, they're working really hard right now. Times are hard for everybody, but even in the county right now, where we're faced with tremendous budget cuts, people are giving of their time to volunteer. And I want to point some of those departments out. The Department of Public Health, Public Works, Health Services, ISD, Sheriffs, and even courts, and many others that I have come across that are giving their time, and they do it regularly. So I want to lift that up because they have busy lives too, but they're doing what they can. So I want to say that while every election, as we know, presents different challenges, voters should know that LA County has those strong safeguards in place. Detailed contingency plans, as we know, and we worked through a tabletop exercise here about a month ago, was very glad and proud to be a part of that, and to see the partnership that all of us came together, understanding with one voice how we have to move forward. And I see it on display today. Everyone has been working around the clock, so please understand that. And in the final hour of voting, we still have a few more hours until 8 o'clock. We want to make clear that people still have time to fill out a ballot, return it to the vote center, or go to your nearest ballot drop box. We don't close till 8 p.m., but I want to make clear, I believe we're going to see a surge. And we may have people standing in line well after 8 o'clock. But we want to guarantee if they're in line by 8 o'clock, they have a right to turn in that ballot and vote. So every voice matters in this election and every election. Now I just want to say very briefly in Spanish, gracias to Dean Logan por la presentación y por su trabajo en la organización de las elecciones en el Condado de Los Ángeles. Hoy hay muchas personas trabajando para que los votantes puedan participar de forma segura. Muchos son empleados del condado de distintos departamentos que están ayudando en este día de las elecciones. Las elecciones libres y accesibles son la base de nuestra democracia. Hoy los votantes están ejerciendo su derecho a votar y decidir el futuro de sus comunidades. Esta elección es tan importante para muchas personas, incluyendo la elección para elegir a alguien para ser gobernador y también el alcalde de Los Ángeles. Sabemos que hay preguntas y dudas sobre el proceso electoral y por eso el condado se ha preparado bien para este día. Hemos hecho inversiones en el acceso del voto, la seguridad y la preparación de las elecciones. La Oficina de Registro del Condado ha trabajado por meses para dar información y apoyo a todos los votantes. Esto incluye centros de votación, buzones seguros, ayuda en varios idiomas y opciones accesibles. En los últimos días, yo he visitado diferentes centros de votación en las ciudades de Bell, Commerce, Montebello, El Monte, Bassett y Hacienda Heights. Y en todo, ahí veo que las personas están trabajando muy duro, con cuidado, dedicación y para ayudar a cada votante. Esto muestra que las elecciones dependen de personas, no solo de un sistema. Estamos en las últimas horas de votación y si tiene su boleto, por favor, llévalo a un centro de votación o buzón hoy. Si se puede ir en persona, llega, pero recuerda, hágalo antes que las 8 de la noche. Cada voto cuenta, cada voz importante. Su voto es su voz. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Dean, for having me this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I want to pick up on two particular points that Supervisor Solis made. One with regard to election security that I think is really important to remind voters out there that the best way to secure an election is through voter participation. We can't have safe and secure elections if people aren't voting and participating. And so we take that responsibility very seriously here at the Registrar's Office. We know this process belongs to the voters, and we want voters to show up and feel confident that they're going to have the opportunity to have an accessible voting experience and that their ballot is going to be handled with security, transparency, and accuracy. And key to that is, and the supervisor referenced it, is this facility, this Ballot Processing Center. We now, all voted ballots come back to this facility in LA County. So there is no longer a movement of ballots to multiple facilities throughout the county. It all happens here. This building or this facility was designed for transparency and security. We live stream our operations. So tonight, as we're processing and counting ballots, people can from their personal device or their home computer can see what's going on here. The tally room where the vote counting takes place is enclosed in glass, and there is a observer loop around that allows people who want to come and watch that process to be here throughout the evening. And we know that that's really important to conveying the trust and confidence that voters expect. So let me talk a little bit about what to expect tonight after the polls close at 8 o'clock. Shortly after the polls close, probably around about 8:15, we will release the first results of the election. Those results will represent vote-by-mail ballots that have been returned through the mail, through today's mail. So even the mail we received today will be included in those vote totals. Ballots returned to drop boxes through yesterday, and mail ballots that were dropped off at vote centers through Sunday. So that first a result that will come out at 8:15 will be a very healthy representative sample of the entire county. That will be a large segment of the votes cast. Shortly after that, we will add to that the votes that were cast at our vote centers during the 10 days prior to Election Day. So the in-person early voting period will be added to that. And then at that point, we will, because we're continuing to process vote-by-mail ballots, we'll have additional vote-by-mail ballots that we can add in, do another update as we wait for the ballots to come back from the individual vote centers. The vote centers, after they close, they secure, they do all of their chain of custody and certification. They take those ballots to a check-in center, and then through our partnership with the sheriff, those ballots are brought back here for central counting. Generally, we start to see those arrive on a pretty steady basis a little before 10 o'clock, and that will continue through the night until all of the ballots that were cast at the vote centers today are included in the count. And we do periodic updates, usually on about 35 to 40-minute cycle throughout the night. We probably will add later in the night even additional vote-by-mail ballots because we have this facility and because we can keep that operation going. So we are committed to getting as much of the vote totals into those reports tonight as possible. But the reality is that we will have a lot of ballots that will come in the mail tomorrow that are still valid, and we will have a lot of ballots that were dropped off by voters at those drop boxes today. Those drop boxes don't close until 8 o'clock. And that means similar to the polling place, if there's a line outside the drop box, everybody who's there at 8 o'clock gets the opportunity to deposit their ballot. Those have to be collected, they have to be brought back here, and they do have to go through that same processing. So that takes some time. Once that processing's done, the counting is actually fast, and we will do updates on a daily basis, starting tomorrow through the weekend and into next week as we have valid ballots to be counted. So I'll just finish that by stating, I think it's important to state that in the days ahead, you will likely hear from voices, some big voices, some loud voices, that it's crazy, that maybe it's even stupid that it takes this long for votes to be counted in California. I want to emphasize it's not stupid, it's not crazy, it's actually the law in California. California's laws allow voters the opportunity to vote up until 8 o'clock on election night and to return those ballots in a way that we get them back in a timely manner. And our job is to make sure that every one of those ballots is treated with that same security as the ballots that were received 2 weeks before the election. So we will be here, we'll be working to make sure that that happens, and we will update those results in a timely basis. I don't want to go too far down that road, but I think it's important to remind, this is a sign that I've been here perhaps for quite a while, but part of that narrative out there about the time it takes to count in California is people are saying, well, that happened because of COVID and when we moved to entirely vote by mail. I want to put that into perspective, that actually before COVID, over half of our electorate in LA County self-selected to be permanent vote by mail ballots. So that was driven by voter behavior and voter preference. So that's an important point to note. And prior to that time, I looked back today, I can give you two examples. In 2010, we had an election here where a very close contest for Attorney General, where LA County District Attorney Steve Cooley and then San Francisco District Attorney Kamala Harris were competing. It was a very close race. That race was not decided until November 24th after the election. So that was in 2010. In 2014, in the primary, we had a very close race for a state controller that came down to only 391 votes statewide. When you have a race that's close, it's important that we make sure that every valid ballot that was cast in that election is counted. So this is not a new thing. This has been the case in California. It's been the policy decision of our leaders in California to make sure that voters are afforded that opportunity to have their vote counted. What has changed since then is back in 2010, what we were waiting for were processing provisional ballots because voters only had the option of going to a single voting location in their neighborhood. If they went to a voting location outside their neighborhood, they had to vote a provisional ballot. Those had to come back, and we had hundreds of thousands of those, and they took weeks and weeks to process. And we only updated the election results twice a week. Now, in this model, any voter can go to any location in the county. They have multiple options for returning their vote-by-mail ballot, and we update those election results every day, starting the day after the election, until we have certified results in the election. So just wanted to offer that context because there is a lot that's being said out there about that process, and I just want to emphasize that both the law in California and our commitment to ensuring that every vote is processed with security and transparency is the reason for that. So with that, again, thank you for being here. Please remind folks there is still time to vote, and happy to take any questions that you may have. Yeah, so I will acknowledge that as the volume of ballots returns has increased in the days leading up to the election, there has been a lag in the ballot tracks notification system, and that goes through our system to the state system, and then that's what drives those ballot tracks message. We believe as of last night that lag had caught up, so most voters should have received those messages by now. But we also have an alternate system on our website at lavote.gov that goes directly into the LA County system, and that is updated in real time. So that's another alternative for voters to check to see the status of their ballot.
Mr. Mogan, so will voting be taking place overnight? Will people actually be counting ballots overnight?
So let me be clear on that. Voting will end at 8 o'clock when the polls close, right? But vote counting will take place tonight. We will continue to process and count ballots until all of the ballots that were cast today at the vote centers are included in the vote total. So yes, that will go into the late hours of tonight and probably even the early hours of tomorrow morning.
We heard a report of one ballot box in downtown Los Angeles being damaged by fire. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, that was a singular incident, unfortunate, and something that we were very responsive to when that was early morning, Sunday morning, when our staff went to check that box. They found burnt material inside the box. Fortunately, it was very minimal amount of material, and at least in a handful of cases, we were able to identify the information for the voters and to reach out to them to let them know and to give them alternate options to vote. But that is the only incident that we have had in this election.
Mr. Logan, are you anticipating a faster count because the provisional ballot status is probably going to be dropped considerably? Everyone that I saw today, even people who were from outside the area, the polling place I was at, West Los Angeles, Santa Monica, came up, click, boom, and they're in.
Yeah.
So there's no provisional voting, meaning, you're going to have very few of those processed.
Yes, it's a huge improvement to not have the provisional ballots because those are very time-consuming to process. So yes, the process is going to be faster. You'll see more in the count tonight and in the days to follow this week than maybe you've seen before. The only caution I would say is we expect as many as 300,000 to 400,000 ballots to be dropped at drop boxes today. Those will not be counted tonight. They have to come back here and they have to go through processing. They will be counted in the days to follow. This week they'll be included, but that would be the only, those would be the ballots that would not be included in tonight's count.
Do you anticipate there may be a problem getting some of the results simply because of the number of candidates we have in various races? I mean, we've got 14 people running for one spot, or God bless them for governor. We may not know who's going to lead for a day or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, especially in a primary where there are multiple candidates, and that really represents the will of the voters who are showing up to vote. If it's a close contest when we wrap up tonight or early tomorrow morning, then yes, we're going to have to wait until those additional vote-by-mail ballots that are valid ballots get added into the total before you can definitively determine who's going to move on to the general election.
Logistically, question, the idea of what optimally, when from 8 o'clock you shut down, when there's not a little line of people outside the door, how long before you shut the doors, pick up the machines, and deliver the ballots and get them here? Are we talking within 2 hours, at most 3 hours, even allowing for flights coming from Catalina, coming from Lancaster?
Yeah, it's really a function of geography and also the volume at the end of the night. When we close at 8 o'clock, anyone, as the supervisor indicated, anyone who's in line at 8 o'clock still has the opportunity to vote. If you've been at the vote centers, you've seen that process moves fairly quickly. So once we get them checked in and get them to the devices, that moves fairly quickly. The workers, once that last voter is voted, the workers then do their chain of command. They document the information and they seal up the voting equipment, they seal up the voted ballots, and they take those to those check-in centers. Then they come back here either by patrol car or by helicopter. So we will start to see, typically we will start to see some of those ballots being delivered as early as 9 o'clock because there are voting locations that are closer to this facility that shut down and they're able to move quickly. There are places in this county that are far away from here, right? And we've got to get those secured and get those ballots back here to be included. So I would say it starts at about 9 o'clock and typically goes till 11:30 or 12 to get those ballots back here. Once they're here, the process goes very quickly.
Mr. Logan, the first batch, what will be the percentage of votes in the county when you start getting the first results in? If there's a percentage of
It's difficult to predict that until we know how many people vote today. What I will tell you is that the vote by mail ballots and the early voting that has already taken place, it has us at about a little over 18% of registered voters, and I think that's probably the best perspective for you to have, is that we will probably go from 18% to, by the time we certify the election, to probably the early to mid 30%. So there's still a lot of ballots to be added in that time period. I think I always like to be optimistic about turnout, especially when the polls are still open, because I want people to get out there and vote. But I think statistically looking at the trend, I think, yeah, probably 33 to 34% by the time we certify the election.
You both touched on concerns about safety and also concerns about potentially voting disruptions by federal agents who may be in exceptional locations. Have we seen any of that so far, and what are we trying to do to prepare against these things that would happen?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that really goes to our stance of being focused on security, readiness, and resilience. So we brought together multiple agencies, both within the county, but also our partners throughout municipal governments and law enforcement. And we went through those scenarios, what to do if something like that happens. Fortunately, we have had no reports of that. And I think our sheriff's office is in regular contact with the federal agencies who also are concerned about election integrity and security. And so we haven't had anything of that nature reported in this election. If there was something of that nature, we have a process where that would get reported up to us very quickly, and we would then work through that coordinated effort to ensure that it doesn't disrupt the voting process. We also have staff who are out in the field who are in close proximity to those vote centers. So again, if there was a need to have somebody go and assist in a disruptive event, we could get somebody there quickly. Yes, so we have the election resource liaisons, which are a group of trained individuals who are through a partnership with our Human Relations Commission. They're people who are trained community workers, who are trained in de-escalation techniques, and also just helping to move things along when there's a potential chaotic event. So the way we would utilize them is if there was a disruptive event, maybe it's not even a disruptive event at voting, but it's near a voting location, we would dispatch those election resource liaisons to go and help with traffic control, to help usher voters from their parking to the vote center so they're not distracted or disrupted by whatever may be happening in the vicinity. Yes, so they are staged throughout the county geographically, so if something happens, again, we can get them there quickly. All right, thank you very much.